So be very careful.
I've been spreading the word.
Just be aware. Where you start having a conversation, you think no one can. Sure.
Okay, I want to call the November meeting of the Richland County Finance and Personnel Committee to order. And Mr. Kalish, Clerk Kalish, would you please call the roll?
Carroll.
Here.
Brewer.
Here.
Luck.
Here.
Manning. Here. Gotcho. Burke. Williamson.
Here.
Cooey.
Here.
Fleming. You have 6 out of 9. You have a quorum.
We have quorum.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. And there was proof of notification,
The meeting was properly noticed, Mr. Chair.
and we have a 17-point agenda, but I'm gonna call for a change in that agenda. Mr. Turk is here. Please note that Mr. Turk is here.
Noted.
Item number 12, I want to strike. I don't think we're prepared to discuss above and beyond duties of employees. I believe we have many employees who are doing duties outside of probably their job descriptions. I'd like to catch up with job descriptions before we take that on
You know-
as a topic.
She looks surprised as I look surprised.
Pardon me,
We're both surprised by that.
you are. Well, I'm
Can we leave it on just to have a quick discussion? As to why it's on there now?
okay,
I appreciate that.
but I'm gonna be quick with the.
I can be quick. I want to be out of here too.
All right, a 15, 17-point agenda. Can I
Move for
have a
approval.
motion? Williamson, Manning. All those in favor? Signal by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the October 3rd minutes. They were published. Any corrections, changes? If not, I will declare them approved as published. Public comment. Public.
I don't have anything to say. I'm just here to listen.
Okay. Financial, discussion and possible action, approval to purchase mobile AVL and mapping module for Spillman Flex.
Mr. Sheriff, I wasn't here with, did they,
Oh, so this is, we have Spillman, well, and Barb ran out of here. We have Spillman now, but I think this is a mobile mapping piece of it, and it allows the sheriff's office to track the squads in real time for safety reasons, so you can kind of know where they're at while they are patrolling. And, this will, help with response time as far as they can see where someone's at and they can call that squad to a scene, things like that. Assist dispatch and making sure that we get the quickest response available. And the cost is paid from the short-term borrowing, so it was in the capital, and it's $16,716.02. And it was approved by the Public Safety Committee,
was that approved in October?
July,
Oh, way back in July. No
with the
wonder I
capital.
don't remember it.
Yep.
Sheriff's Committee.
Yeah.
So we're being asked to approve this expenditure for improvement in the mapping, Spillman. And
I'll make a motion to approve.
thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion. Yes,
Was this the software that was identified in the short-term borrowing, or was it diverted from something else?
It was in Fund 92, which
Yeah.
is the short-term.
Short-term borrowing.
2023.
It was identified in the capital plan.
Do we have enough, Barb, do we have enough data storage to handle all this?
Yeah, this won't be more storage, it's really just live on the map.
okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
is this program particularly in the domain of the sheriff's department?
Yeah.
Well, emergency services in general.
I see.
Yes. Makes it easier to find you, should that day, God forbid, ever come.
My wife knows how to ID.
I know where you live. Okay, all those, favor of this expenditure improvement in the system signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Discussion of possible action, approval of fund transfer for the Health and Human Services Department. Trish Clements is here to tell us all about it.
So we have a risk reserve fund, fund of our children's HAP money. So this is money that's used to support children who have disabilities, and the money that isn't spent each year, the state allows us to keep it in a reserve fund. We are asking to have just under $200 transferred.
177, or John Beatty's.
Excuse me, somebody had his phone on.
Transferred out of that fund to cover our Zoom license for next year. This is an allowable expense by the state.
Okay. So this is probably something we do every year, I would guess.
In the past, we haven't done it this
Oh.
way, so it just depends on how much funds we have for the program that year and what's our best utilization of them.
But it's
It's
not,
also getting pretty full that we have to start spending because we can
okay,
only
so
so
you
much.
just want to move it? Okay,
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Louis, seconded by Luck. Any more discussion, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to offer an expression of appreciation. I notice this quite often when Trish brings forward a request to transfer funds from one account or one line to another. She brings that request forward to this committee, and I think that's very good transparency and accountability. I think it's responsibility of committees to be aware of and to be accountable as well for the transfer of funds from one account to another.
Thank you, Mr. C. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Trish, for staying late to tell us about that. Discussion and possible action, Simon's deficiency appropriation and economic development payment. Mr. Kalish, I'm sure you have some information for us.
Yes, so if you guys look at your packet, you should have a packet in there. There's this other attachment that we didn't receive until 1:30 this afternoon, so I wasn't able to get that in there, so. Okay, it's on the web, but wasn't in your packet, so. It's a bit of a history story here. So if you look at the first resolution that's in your packet, you'll see that's resolution 22-103. That was from the first rounds of deficiency appropriations that we approved back on September 20th of 2022. So that was the 95,222.81. We're gonna split that between the city and county. So if you look at the Excel sheet that I provided you, maybe as I go through the explanation, that would be helpful. So turn to the last page on that first packet I sent you, and there's an Excel sheet on there. Maybe just follow along with that. So when you find that, you'll see that the first deficiency appropriation was the 95,222.81. Okay, that was to be split between the city and county. We approved that resolution that then refilled that bucket, right, by taking money out of the general fund to cover that deficiency, right? This is a standard practice. Remember, deficiency appropriations are done every year. We had to do 2 years worth when we did this one in 22 because they were not done. So I was catching up to things not being done, okay? So then if you look at the second page of your packet, there it says there's an invoice from the county clerk's office. So you'll recall not too long ago, the economic development director was split funded between the city and county. So there was a 60% county contribution and a 40% city contribution, right? So at the first part of 2023, I sent this invoice, as I always do, to the city and said, pay it by December 31 of 2023, knowing that at that point in time, I conferred with previous administrator Langrick. He said, send the invoice. So I did, knowing that, you know, the discussions on economic development, either staying in the city or county, whatever, there was some movement that may be there. So the invoice was sent for the budgeted amount, the 60-40 split, with an instruction for me to pay it by December 31st, again, not knowing what was gonna happen. Perfect. Okay, so if you go to the third page in this packet, you will see here's proof that we received the $51,371.38 from the city. So I sent that invoice. One more slide down would be the actual expense revenue guideline. Yeah, it's a little wonky. Okay, so that kind of sat there, right? So we had the deficiency appropriation. For whatever reason, that wasn't settled. And then I sent the bill for their share of economic development, and that was kind of out there as well. And then in April of this year, April of 2023, at Finance and Personnel, there was the response to notification of withdrawal from economic development. So the city said, oh, hey, you know what, Jason's gonna move over here full-time, and it won't be a joint venture as it was before. Okay, so that agenda's in there. In that packet is also the agenda cover item that Clinton had kind of explained what was to happen, the minutes on there. So unfortunately, it looks like this item was never really kind of shored up. Like it was kind of set to rest at April 4th and we never cleared it up. So insert Derek and Candace and getting this all figured out. So the sheet that's up here has option 1 is what I sent the city. Option 2 is what Ashley Oliphant, the administrator, just sent us this afternoon. So if you're looking at option 1, you can see the 2023 economic development budget, as I just said, split 60-40 between the county and city. So my understanding or my thought is how we would work this out was we would take the number of working days that Jason was employed as the economic development director. Again, this is working days, so 260 days. And then we take the cost per day of the city share. We come up with a daily rate to say, okay, actually from the city, that's how much, that was their portion of the contribution of the 51,000 that they paid. Because remember, they paid that for the entire year, right? But we didn't go the entire year. So then you see there, the 2023 city payment is what they paid us, $51,000, giving them credit for the 13,000 that they would owe in theory for their part assignments, leaves, and overpayment of $38,000. So they essentially overpaid us $38,000. Then we go down to the deficiency appropriation. We have the ones from 2022, 47,000, but we also have the ones from 2340 that we just approved in April as well. That'd be for fiscal year 2022. Those are $20,000. So my logic and thought process behind this was we take the share of their deficiency is $67,000. That would include the stuff from 2022, the current ones from 2023, give them a credit for the $38,000 that they essentially overpaid for economic development services, and then we are left with the balance due of $29,000. So that's how Candace and I looked at this, right? I agree this seemed to make the most sense.
However, and I think you have to back up one slide, really, because there is the agenda item cover from the April 4th meeting, which has consideration of next steps. And in that, Clint was agreeing with and basically asking the county to follow in what the city was requesting, which was that the county pay for the months of January, February, and March. And April, that's right, through April, we pay for the entirety of Jason Glassbrenner. So that is what you're seeing in column 2. Next one, Barb. Now we're.
Of that would be in the spreadsheet I just gave you, column 2, the printed one.
It's
This one.
That one.
So in this spreadsheet, that's where you're going to see the difference.
Right. So if you look at the, where it says 2023 city payment, they have $51,000. And their, this option says, oh no, they shouldn't have paid anything for the city, like, or the economic development, we're gonna pay for all those costs. So the county is going to absorb those. So I don't know, in full disclosure, I don't know what conversations were had between whoever to say, yeah, the county's gonna absorb that cost from January to April. I don't know. I'm not aware that that was formally decided. I'm not quite sure. I do know that Ashley has a note up there that says proposed by administrators Langreck and Oliphant. I don't know. I have no information regarding that, but at this point, they've applied, the actual amount, they are just, their proposal is that the county, pay for Jason's, salary from January 1 through April 4, and that they don't need to be charged for that, or we would absorb that full cost. So that the difference then is option 2 would be $16,396.45 owed by the city, or option 1, which is the $29,634.31.
I think it really boils down to the question, does this board wish to pay for Jason Glassbrenner's salary from January to April? In its entirety, not the percentage as agreed upon, but in its entirety. That's really where the difference is here.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Mr. Carroll.
Administrator Oldham given any rationale for why that would be the case?
Because she and Clint apparently had agreed to it. And if you look back in the prior, it says, the administrator agrees with this request because it says to determine 2023 financial contribution. The city is requesting the county assume full responsibility for all expenses incurred between 1/1/23 and 4/4/23. The administrator agrees with this request in context of fulfilling the 2023 budgetary initiative that the county's 2023 appropriation for economic development was procured from the transfer of the defunct housing authority funds and intended to prioritize housing development. Assuming responsibility for all expenditures through April 4th will amount to approximately $33,134. So it appears that the logic was, well, we'd already appropriated this $33,000 for the year, so why don't we pay it all? But Derek and I, neither of us see how that really makes a lot of sense. But again, not our call, your call, as to how you want to spend those dollars.
Without having Clint Langrick here, question, we have to accept Ashley's version of what occurred.
And there is a transition plan that's in your packet too. So I'm not sure if this was crafted by the county or the city, but that transition plan for economic development director addresses some issues about giving equipment back, which we've taken care of those, about transferring balances over the city. So we didn't pay out any vacation or sick or anything like that. It was just, the city kind of took that, you know, as what it was from us. The same with sick leave. And so the next steps for the county were to request equipment to be transferred at no cost, which we took care of all of that. I know Barb, we spoke about that as well. Provide a letter stating that employment is being relinquished. I believe we have that formal notification as Clint presented in the April meeting. But the last thing is then determine the 2023 financial contribution, requesting the county assume full responsibility of all expenses incurred between 1/1 and 4/4. So this is in there as well. And again, I don't know if this is a working document that those two had. I can't say for sure, but Candace is right. We have to, you folks should decide which option you would like to pursue with, you know, sorting out these deficiency appropriations, because we're already trying to figure out the 2021. We have 2022 yet, and 2023 is right around the corner. So,
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Gotcha.
I made that motion in April, and I remember having that conversation about line items 3 and onward from the proposal, and we ultimately chose to do lines 1 and 2 because we knew that the Simons deficiency was going to be outstanding. And I remember some concern to whether that would be made whole. So I don't remember it as being an either or, like we would get Simons and then we would agree to the first quarter of 2023. I don't remember it that way at all.
Did anybody watch the meeting?
well,
It was recorded.
in the minutes, so I read the minutes, and the minutes don't address the last part, the contribution. They do, like, some of the items were addressed, Tim, I think, like you're referring to, but it kind of ends there. So this was kind of a work in progress in April too, right? Like, there was a couple different moving pieces here, so.
Mr. Seep, you had a comment?
Sometimes the minutes are nuanced and you really have to go back and listen to the tape. But on this issue of the previous administrator agreeing to making an agreement with the city, since he was in a position to speak for the county. I believe in general that we should honor the commitment that he made. Even though it may not be palatable, I think that when we hire an administrator and we ask them to speak on behalf of the county or make agreements on behalf of the county, or we authorize them to make agreements on behalf of the county, then we should not, I hate to use the word renege on that, but I agree with Candace and that it's somewhat uncomfortable, but it's also a mess that we need to clean up. And we need to have a viable and a cooperative, congenial, civil relationship
Play
with
nice with the
city.
city. Is that what you're saying?
the city.
Play nice.
I'm through.
Mr. Manny?
Was this anything that was brought forward to the full board, or did it have to be? I know full board approved it.
If,
Mr.
what,
Chair, that's why we expressly only did lines
Right.
1 and 2,
Right.
because we were concerned about forfeiting Q1 of 2023. Like I said, it wasn't a quid pro quo in my mind at that time, that we would pay this if we got Simons. I think the question at hand was, we may have this outstanding in addition to Simons, and that outstanding figure is growing. And so that's why we didn't take action.
But didn't the administrator agree to pay it?
He brought it, Mr. Chair brought it to us for consideration, and we took no action.
Well, what does the city understand?
Well, the city's understanding option 2, or is their preferred option is option 2. But Tim is absolutely right where, Administrator Langrick also proposed to keep the allocated money for the city to apply towards the money the city owed for the Simons deficiency. And exactly what you said, you weren't able to vote on item number 3, which is how do we clear this up? Because you didn't know. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. We need to clear that up, and we can clear it up with option 1 or option 2.
We're still there.
Correct.
Mr. Carroll, you had a comment or thought or question?
Yeah, I wasn't clear on how those funds from that housing authority figured into this. Why was that in there?
I'm wondering if that was included, some of the work was being credited for Jason closing that CDBG legacy funds and the work involved in doing that to get the money from housing over to here. That's kind of, actually, I believe that's where that came from.
I wonder if that was the quid for the pro.
Yeah, and how that was quantified, I guess I don't know, but
That was the work that we were paying for, as if I remember.
then you're still paying for that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I still have a sour taste in my mouth about that parking lot myself, about the Simons. That
Oh,
was
wow.
never repaid.
No, let's really going back, Gary. Let's not go back there.
Have we resolved that relationship with the city regarding Simon Center?
We have not. Still being
I would
discussed.
say it's moving forward, and this is the kind of the final piece
Yes.
to that is for you all to decide which way you want to go with this, so that we have a resolution to it that Ashley can then take to the council and we can close this out. Derek and I have met with Ashley and Jason. We've discussed this. It was a very amicable, friendly conversation. It's not adversarial at all. We all kind of came into this at different times, and so, but it is just something we want to put to bed so we can move forward.
And there will be the 2023 deficiencies that we'll have to address too in a few
And
months.
we've been clear in relaying that we
Yeah.
expect deficiencies for 2023.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Lund.
Administrator Pesh, what's your recommendation? 1 or 2?
Personally, I would recommend 1. I don't understand the logic. In looking at this, I don't understand why the county would assume full responsibility for that amount of money. It just doesn't make sense to me, but I wasn't here I wasn't in on those conversations, but I can tell you, I don't think I would have supported that agreement, given the information that I have at hand. Even if he had closed out, we had already paid, we were already paying for that work to be done. Why would we pay additional dollars? That's just my take on it. Derek, did you have anything else to
Yeah,
add?
no, I agree. I think that's fair. I think, I wasn't heavily involved in those discussions either, so there could be something that
We don't.
we're not privy to, we don't know, but, you know, so I don't want to generalize, but I feel the same as Candace does actually, so.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
why don't we proceed with option one and see what the response is from the city, and we can always work out. If they don't agree to it, then we compromise, or we, you know, have a different discussion.
Did we, Mr. Chair,
yes.
did we have any signed agreement to the 60/40? And at what time was that signed, if so?
Yeah, it was for the economic development director when Jason was,
Yeah.
brought on. I mean, that was a hire, but yes. I think-
Why would we pay 100% if we both agreed to pay 60/40? Looking at option one.
Yeah, so that's split 60/40, for the 40% would be the city share, the 51,000.
I thought they were requesting us to pay 100% for those 4 months.
That's option two.
That's option two.
Okay.
For the first, yeah.
Yeah, so that, why would we want to pay 100% when we'd already?
That's the question at hand, correct?
And it must have had something to do with receiving that closed housing.
Well, that was part of the work he was doing around that time, because we did
Yeah.
get the 79,000 around that.
Getting
time, so-
that fund.
Yeah, I mean, part of that work he was doing.
I'm sure
on
Clint
behalf of-
felt in the spirit of moving things along,
Sure.
he'd apply that there. I was trying to do some math. Can you throw that, what was it, a 30-some thousand payment or?
That's really what it's illustrating
Yeah.
there, because the additional total cost to the county then would be that $19,857, because we would eat that 51,000 that the city would have paid.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. C.
Candace, you indicated you had a conversation with the city and with Jason, and that it was an amiable and amicable conversation. Are you confident that option one would arrive at a mutually satisfactory solution?
You know, the request from Ashley was simply to bring this in front of this board. Derek and I both relayed the fact that we believed option one was accurate. But she, I think, in the spirit of wanting to see it all the way through and making sure that this board was in agreement, that that is in fact what the wishes of the board are, asked us to bring it here. So we are doing that. And so I don't think it will affect our working relationship at all. And again, as Melissa pointed out, if she has some concern, we can have that dialogue and we can always report back to this committee again.
So, you're confident, you have a notion that option one will be acceptable to them, perhaps with some adjustment.
Somebody make a motion.
I make a motion, we go with option one. If you feel that's fair and accurate, I don't know why we wouldn't.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second? No?
I'll second it.
Oh, no
I
second.
got 2 of them.
Sorry,
One more question.
geez, give me a break, can't hear. Yeah,
We haven't received anything for Simons for 3 years. Wait, am I reading that right?
For the deficiency appropriations, that's
Right.
correct. So the first one for 95,000, that payment was held up, and then there was the one just issued in April for 20,000, and no, so none of those, we've refilled money from the general fund to fill the bucket, but we have not been reimbursed.
Okay, so the understanding is moving forward, this will happen annually.
What's that?
Once we get this resolved, they will do deficiency appropriations to us annually.
That's exactly, so when we did them in 2022, that was for 21 and 20, because again, there was a little bit of delay there, so then we did them, yes, they will be annual as they normally have been, so that's why we just did it in April of 2023 for 2022.
you have to remember that Simons came through a really tough time, well, you know. were chair of the committee of that. It didn't have any business.
So deficiency appropriations are typically done in April. I think it's going to lead to bigger conversations about the lease, other conversations with how that works if there's an overage in other ways, so.
Yeah, and we still need to hear how the citizens group was taking over capital funding for Simons. That enters into it. I'm prepared to ask for a vote here on option one. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, take that one to them. See how that flies. Wage and compensation plan, Candace, discussion of possible action.
Okay, so, one of my very first board meetings, when I wasn't even official yet, it was discussed that we should, John was given direction to go out and seek quotes for a comp and class study. And so we did that. I did that. And so what I received back is in your packet in its entirety. I will say that we did also have follow-up phone calls with some of these providers, and this was a recommended list from HR professionals in other counties of different companies that they had used over time. And what we found was that the two that seemed to most closely match what we were thinking with costs that didn't seem really astounding were Evergreen Solutions and David Drown and Associates. The interesting piece though, when we called Evergreen Solutions, they're out of Florida, and their customer service on some of this stuff we didn't think was as beneficial. They'll only be on site once or twice throughout the entire study. And I truly believe that if you want a study to be done well, you want buy-in, you want transparency, and you want participation, you need to have a consultant that is going to be present. So with that, realistically, we both feel as though David Drown is probably the best solution. I have worked with David Drown previously, so I know the type of product they provide. I know the type of service they provide. And they also provide the maintenance plan that we had discussed, which means that rather than waiting years and years and years in between compensation and classification studies, you take a third of the jobs each year, you look at them, you do a market study, you evaluate them, so that when you're making adjustments, you're doing it annually in smaller bites so that you don't get behind the market and so that you don't have those large wholesale costs when you're looking at compensation. But again, I put all of these in your packet. So if you have questions or things that you'd like to discuss, please, by all means, ask. And we can kind of talk through where the differences were or where the challenges were or what we didn't like about some versus others.
Mr. Chair. The first question I have is just like, do you have a pot of money that you've identified as to how we pay for any of these studies?
So the comp and class study we can pay for with ARPA dollars.
ARPA?
We can. Now the implementation is a whole other ball of wax. That is why I was extremely clear with all of these companies that I want a pathway to implementation. I want them to assess our financial situation and give me options on how we get to implementation, whether that is every 6 months we give a percentage, whether it's a 2-year to get to market, whether it's a 3-year to get to market. How are we going to do that? Because as was discussed in the meeting that I was present for, there's no point in doing a study, number one, if we're not going to actually implement it. And number two, if we're going to just pick and choose, because again, the challenge that we're faced with now, the compression and the reclassifications that have happened all over the place that have led to inequity in job classifications and all sorts of other things. was because we didn't follow the plan and we didn't implement it all the way. So, you know, if we're going to do this, we have to really be committed to doing it. That means going through the process initially. I did ask the question, how soon will we know how far off the market we are and what that number is going to look like? And they said in the first 4 to 6 weeks. We should have a very good idea of how far off the market we are. I had a very interesting phone call with Carlson Detman last week, and it alarmed me more than I had anticipated it would. Because when I questioned them on their methodology and their data, I found out that they're really not going out to get any new data. They're basing everything off of the data that they had from 2018 when they did the study. And when I asked specifically about a job classification that I know there's market data out there for, they said, well, none of your comparable counties had that. So we just went off of our margin line and made a guess as to where we are. And that's why our EMTs are getting paid $14 an hour, which is silly. So I was much more concerned at that point after hearing their justification for how they were obtaining and utilizing data, because I don't feel like we're getting what we're paying for with that. And I specifically asked that question. I said, so you don't go out and speak with private sector ambulance services? Well, no, we purchased some private market surveys, but we don't do that. Where I know DDA does that because we had a jail that had ICE inmates. That's not routine. We said that. We said, you know, these aren't apples to apples comparisons. Can you go out and find, you know, detention centers that take in ICE inmates so that you're getting that apples to apples comparison so that we're really looking at their market? And we did that. We also did it for our highway department. We had like the 11th most roads in the state of Minnesota. You know, we had a lot of roads for a very, very small highway department. So we wanted to make sure we were comparing with the volume of work. So those sorts of things I think are really important. And I think it's really imperative to have someone who understands the challenges that we face in local government. And DDA is actually a local government founded business. The founder was a former county administrator, and everybody on staff has worked in either city or county government. So there's some wins there.
Would we, and I know we're going to ask them to do a compensation study, but would they become our go-to then instead of Carlson Detman?
Yes, they would. And because of the annual maintenance fee, we don't pay per job we send to them. We pay that annual fee. Everything is then included. That means the reviewing of the 1/3 of the jobs. She usually does a mini market analysis. Anybody that is 10% or under or more under the market, we then pull up and we get them adjusted then. So they're not waiting a year or 2 years and then they're off 15 or 20% of the market. So it's a very good methodology. And please understand, I'm not asking you to give me the green light on this tonight, but what I would like to do is bring Tessa in to present to you. And if you would like me to arrange Evergreen to present as well, I'd be happy to do that. If you'd like to ask them questions, I think it would be more likely that would be a Zoom because they are not local, but we can do that. So I just wanted your thoughts and opinions. Carlson Detman did submit a proposal, but given the fact of what I know now and what we've all experienced, I hesitate to stay with that same company.
Harold,
The DDA proposal has 5 options. Could you kind of quickly go through what that means and what you think we should go for?
Well, it's really, these are little modules, if you will. So, I mean, I recommend you do the full. But so the first part is the compensation study and the market analysis. So that's really where they go out and they collect all the data. And then they amend or establish a new compensation system, which means then this is what we did. We created an entirely new wage scale based on the market data, based on how far off the market we were. And then once we determined that, how long did we want it to take for people, when they walked in the door, that initial first step on the salary scale to the top of the salary scale? What did we want that to look like? Because initially we had 12 steps and people were saying it's taking us 12 years to get to the top of the scale, and we were losing people because of it. So that's
But
another.
at least there was a goal. I mean, we didn't have anything here in this county.
Right.
There was, you hired for a job and that was it.
Right.
Yeah, you could be there for 30 years.
But the point is that these options are additive. All 5 of those options would be their full.
Yes, all 5 of those. So, you don't have to do the ongoing maintenance. I would suggest it based on what I discussed with the maintenance plan and looking at a third of the jobs every year. And then it's including if we have to reclassify or create a new job description.
Not additive.
No, they don't, no, you don't add up those numbers, because if you take them one by one, it's probably more than if you take.
Okay, so they give you a package deal. So the
Correct.
83,875 is 1 through 3. And then if we wanted to pay for the ongoing every year, we would pay an additional
Right, the
28,000.
Right, that's the entire package. But I'm
Okay,
saying
so
that.
items 1 through 3 add up to 97,000 for everyone. So at 83 would be a significant discount.
Yep.
Of,
I was talking more about the actual pieces of it.
right, okay.
Than the cost piece, sorry.
So I was looking at the math and I'm like, that doesn't look like 83,000 to me. But I'm
No.
bad at math, so I used a calculator.
And then you'll see too in the number 3 there, it also talks about the implementation analysis and the strategy for the compensation. Because I mean, when we did this, our implementation cost was 1.4 million to get us up to market. It had been 18 years since we had done a wage study, and we were severely off the market. I have no idea where we sit here because there's no real way to establish that. But that's where Tessa was really, really great as far as helping us to think through and look at our budget and say, okay, what can we front load? How can we do this? What makes the most fiscal sense? And then establish a plan from there. So that's what I can tell you about this one. But again, I mean, there are plenty of other ones. MRA, we spoke with them. They had never actually touched a public sector entity before. And so that's not someone that we want doing a study for us. John and I both kind of went, ooh, nope. Gallagher's a great company, but they wanted $500 per job description. And as many as we have, that would be significant. McGrath never responded. I sent them information and I didn't get a response from them. But again, I think we have some good options here, but it's really up to you what action you'd like me to take going forward, or if you want me to just sit on this for a while yet, it's up to you.
Melissa?
So you, Administrator Pesh, you've gone through one budget cycle. You kind of have a feel for where our finances are sitting. Do you feel that we have enough room in our current financial situation to make significant progress on wage?
I do.
changes?
I think we'd have to be strategic about it. And it may be that we have to address those that are the furthest off the market first, or we have to take baby steps and do, percentage now, a percentage in
I mean, that's what we were doing before, and we just kept getting further and further
July.
behind.
Well, right. And this is the thing now. I mean, if we're going to actually look at it and implement it all the way, then that's part of our challenge and part of what Derek and I are doing is really evaluating where our accounts are sitting, because oftentimes there's money that's left and nobody's ever really looking at it to say, oh, what is our balance in this account? What is our balance in this account? These dollars weren't spent. Do we need them for that, or can they be reallocated to be utilized to get our wages up to par? And so those are conversations we're having, and we actually have a meeting set up with the treasurer to analyze all of those accounts to really get an accurate picture of where we're at fiscally.
We've had those conversations because both the sheriff and HHS would, have come to us and said, hey, we underspent our budget by this much money this year. Can we possibly use that to give our staff raises? And we said no, because we want it to be fair, equitable, blah, blah, blah. But so we try to have those conversations. It's just if we could get a big overall big picture, then perhaps
And
there
that's
could
what
be
we're.
progress.
Mr. Seep, you had a comment.
Quickly, I'm not a member of this committee, so I'm trying, I want to try to be brief and not.
Well, but you made the effort to get here, so.
Thank you. I enjoy coming to your meetings, especially when we have such distinguished people as our chair, Brett.
Keep rolling.
Now, back to where I was. To Candace, over the years, and I've been on this board since 2012, and I'm not so sure that I'm going to be around much longer. But over the years, I've on various committees, I hear from board members from time to time, what do they really do in that office? You know, what are they doing down there?
You mean any given office?
Yeah, any given office.
All right.
From time to time, what are they doing down in that office, you know? I don't know what they're doing, you know? And these are board members who are members on the committee, on various committees. And I have time and time again, and I've had experience with this over the years in my own career. First things first, I've asked for a task analysis, which requires professional expertise to come into a department and to do a task analysis and determine what sometimes you find that people invent their own job descriptions, their own duties that are unrelated to the original purpose. And I think that part of a study related to compensation is a good, intense task analysis of individual departments, maybe over a period of time. But that answers that question. Then you can have a job description that is accurate. And people often work out of their job descriptions and like to invent, some people like to invent new roles that have really nothing to do with their original job description. In any business, private or public, I managed for 30 years. I managed personnel and budgets, and so I'm not speaking from the top of my head here. I'm speaking somewhat from my own experience. I would like to us to consider as we move forward, taking a look at departments and doing a task analysis.
So what I can tell you is that is the first step in DDA's process. It's what's called a PAQ, Position Analysis Questionnaire. Every employee fills it out, but then their manager, their supervisor, and their department head look at that. And then before it actually goes to the consultant, it actually would come in front of me and I would look at it. So that's how we avoid those things that people try to slide in. If their supervisor or their department head says, no, they don't do that, or that's not what I've requested, or that's not part of this position, it gets struck out. And so, and it's a very transparent process so that once that's done and once changes have been made, what is changed goes back to the employee before or as it goes off to the consultant so that they understand that, nope, this isn't what we're asking you to do. This is what we're asking you to do. And so what came out of that was we had very, very accurate job descriptions at the end of that because it was based off of the actual input of everybody involved in that chain of command to get that job description accurate.
I'm somewhat skeptical of asking employees to tell us what they do.
And I understand
fill out
that.
questionnaires.
That's why you need checks and
I think
balances.
they need to be questioned more intensely. And I think we need to look more closely at what's being done with regard to the statutory requirements as well. So I only offer that as a comment based upon what I hear and my experience over the years here and my 30 years experience as a manager.
I'm going to simplify this for you all. We are not really satisfied with Carlson Dedman. I think we can all agree on that. I never have been, personally. Candace recommends that we replace him. She's bringing some options forward. So all she asks is it okay for us to look at a couple of those, Evergreen and DDA? And I say yes. So I think that's the kind of motion I'd like to see here.
I make that motion if I were a member, but I'm not.
We need to go forward with these guys.
Well,
Mr. Manning makes the motion. Are you seconding, Mr.
No, I think Mr. Cooley has a comment.
Bowie? You want a shortstop, having him come in and do a
Yeah, I'm
presentation?
ready to go. Let's quit wasting time on this. This looks, to me, if Candace, I trust Candace, work with them. If she feels confident with us, I've got.
Okay, your motion died.
I have a
last
question.
second. Yes,
so Evergreen is half as much, and even if it says they're only gonna come here twice, we could pay them to come a bunch more times and still be way less than the 83, because they're at 44.5.
They are, but I would caution you get what you pay for. And you get, if it's someone who doesn't know public sector as well. I again.
So Evergreen, so you're not recommending Evergreen, even though you have them in here?
If I had to choose between the two today, I would hands down go with DDA because I know them, I'm comfortable with them, I've worked with them, and I know there are probably 20 to 30 Minnesota counties that use them as well.
Because those emails that you got where the people were estimating, they were also in the $50,000 range.
That was just for the study, but if you look at a lot of those, they had tacked on costs. So if you wanted.
Well, there wasn't very much information at all in those emails.
FLSA evaluation, that was an additional $100, additional per position description, which if we have 400 some odd jobs, that's gonna add up. But again, if you want me to bring them in, I am happy to
I
bring
don't want
them.
to waste time, but it's $83,000. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And I just want to be, I don't want to just rubber stamp it.
Mr. Williamson.
We see what happened. I'm sure last time, the only one that might have been on here was Mr. C. They went with the lowest bid, I'm sure. Because I know the county board when I got on in 2016, and we see what happened with Carlton Detman. I'm sure they were the low bid.
They never gave us the full enchilada.
My thoughts.
I think they were the only bid.
Well, does anybody want to, Mr. Manning's motion died for lack of a second. Does anyone want to replace that motion?
Well, my motion would be to go forward with the
DDA? Okay,
I'll
motion. Motion and a second to just go forward with DDA based on the county administrator's recommendation. Okay. Motion and second. We have the motion and the second. Are you prepared to do that, ma'am?
I am, what I would prefer to do is bring Tessa in to do a presentation, but
Well,
if the board wants me to just go, I can go.
I think the board wants you to go. This board wants you to go.
Okay.
All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Don't, that Melissa Luck voted no. When it all flies to pieces, she'll be able to say, I told you so.
Be gone, I won't care.
You'll still be here. No one can leave. Okay. All right. Discussion possible action, employee uniform allowance under personnel.
That would be me.
You.
So the reason this came up is the other day I received a voucher to sign off for a uniform allowance, but it was for one of the office support staff in the sheriff's office. And I thought, why is the office support staff in the sheriff's office getting a uniform allowance? And when I looked at the back and I looked at what it was, it's flannel shirts and sweaters and stuff that you would just buy to wear out on any normal day. And if that's the case, that's fine. But I went and started asking questions about whether or not we're taxing it and what the handbook said and all that happy stuff. And I started questioning whether or not the intent of that policy was to provide uniform allowance to two secretarial staff, considering the fact that we have clerical staff all over the county, we have professional staff all over the county, and are we intending then to provide that same benefit for other employees? The answer when I asked was, well, this is the way we've always done it. And I'm guessing it came from back when everybody was union, because then that benefit would have extended to everyone within the sheriff's office. But it is in the sheriff's department handbook under section 25. It says that the sheriff shall maintain a voucher system for the purpose of uniform and equipment purchase and maintenance for each member of the department. Well, again, uniform and equipment. The county shall allocate $500 per employee per year and $650 for the sheriff and chief deputy and lieutenants. And they can only be used for the purchase of approved items. So in looking at that, that seems to indicate to me that this is for licensed staff, but that is not historically how it has been applied.
That's correct.
So we need, or I need clarification on whether or not you intend to continue to offer uniform allowance to these two clerical staff. And if so, that can be done. It can be done. I'm not asking you to change it, but then we have to tax them on that benefit, because the IRS rules are extremely clear on this. And I knew this from my previous experience. That's why my hair started on fire when I saw this. I'm like, are we taxing this? No. So they have to be, work clothes and uniform allowance can only be non-taxable if it meets certain conditions. They have to be required as a condition of employment, and they cannot be worn or adapted to general usage as ordinary clothing. So to just give clerical staff money to buy clothes that don't say Richland County Sheriff's Office or.
That was always I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. My impression was they were always had the emblem. It was shirts and they had emblems.
Yeah, mine too.
That was what I was always. Under.
Oh no, the order that I got was cute sweaters and flannel shirts and a Christmas shirt and some other things. And I kind of.
Yeah, no, that is not at all what I was under the impression that it was.
I thought it was an emblem and it was to present to the public.
That they're the sheriff's
Or
department.
This is a professional outfit and our
Right.
people are uniformed.
And I have seen where, for example, our former dispatch unit, they received a clothing allowance. They had to wear black slacks or tan slacks, and they had to wear a shirt of some sort with the Freeborn County Sheriff's Office logo or Freeborn County Dispatch logo. So if, I don't know if you want to modify the requirement to state that if they're getting this uniform allowance, they must use it to purchase items that are, I don't know what the wishes are, but one way or the other, we have to change the way we're doing it, because the way we're doing it now isn't legal and we just have to clean it up.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
so it's only, so the deputy uniforms and the jail staff uniforms, those are not taxable because they meet the criteria listed.
Correct.
Like you stated. It's simply the secretarial staff unless we dictated what they wore. Like if we said they had to wear khakis and a polo with the logo on it.
Yes.
Then it would not be taxable, but if it
Correct.
otherwise.
And they could only use it, and they have to turn in receipts proving that they purchased it for such. That's the other thing, proper substantiation of the clothing purchase, that the clothing purchase has occurred, which we're already doing. I mean, they're turning in receipts, so that's not, but it's really, number one, do we think it's appropriate to give the secretarial staff a uniform allowance? That's question number one. If we want to continue that, wonderful. Then do we want it to be taxable and they can just buy whatever they want? Or do we want to change that requirement to be something that is specifically indicating that they work in the sheriff's office for normal wear?
I mean, I was always under the impression that it was something that was identifying them as working for the sheriff's department. So,
when do you need an answer on this?
We don't have to decide this today.
Can this go back to your committee?
sure. I mean, I would like to hear an explanation for
I'd like to hear.
what was actually purchased and
Yeah.
why they thought that was.
I mean, obviously, my thought right now is we require what they wear and they don't have to pay tax on it, okay?
That would be my thoughts. Mark.
But there might be some other reason we're not thinking of just here.
This could be simply talking to them and saying, look, this is how it works. Can you not do that again?
But we will be required to make a policy change of some sort.
Yeah.
So that's why it's here. Because there will be a policy change required, and I wanted to see which direction you all felt comfortable with or what you're recommending.
And I'm sure that the sheriff might say, well, this is part of their compensation.
Have we had conversation with the sheriff?
I had a conversation with Aaron because the sheriff wasn't available. And he said, well, that's just how it's always been done. We don't really know why. It's just always been done that way.
I know the previous county board chair did not like the policy for the office staff and wanted to change it, but it never went anywhere.
Okay.
There was a large
That is
protest to it.
Well, then the action on this, I'd like to refer it back to the.
Perfect.
Well,
We can do that.
And get some more input.
I don't.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Number 12, discussion possible action, employee compensation for duties performed outside of job description. I have a problem with this, but Melissa?
Well, do you want to start or you want me to?
Well, I can start as to why this is on the agenda. There is a specific employee that has taken on additional duties. 2 employees?
Amber and,
Oh, well, there's a second one now, but
yeah.
this arose from one specific employee and then has branched out and has taken on additional duties due to a vacancy and are requesting additional compensation. Now, I did have conversations to ask the question about how this has been handled in the past. And what I was told was if they were asked to be acting director or acting in a capacity, they were then, yes, given the additional compensation. But if they were not asked to assume that role, but were just given additional duties, they were not compensated. So this agenda item has caused some ruckus amongst some department heads because there are several department heads who have told me, I have a lot of staff that has taken on additional duty and has never gotten paid for it, either because of vacancies, because of jobs that were eliminated or not filled. And so it's not going to be as simple as 1 or 2 people. And I think that's a concern for sure. But it's also a concern when we're asking employees to take on more and not compensating them accurately. So, if we decide to move on a comp in class, that can bring some relief at some point. But I feel as though, and when Melissa and I spoke about this, it's got to be a wholesale policy change if we do it. It can't be based on one person or another person, or because there's too much room for trouble. So that's my 2 cents.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Yes.
So from my perspective, there's a very specific example of there's a temporary opening. Like we don't think it'll be a permanent transfer of duties. It's a temporary situation. Actually, I think in both situations.
I agree.
We have a director of EMS leaving, we have an opening in a zoning administrator. So to me, it doesn't feel right to ask them to take on the duties of 2 directors without at least some kind of temporary while they're doing that compensation. So once those positions are filled or however the rearrangement happens with land and zoning, who knows what's happening, what we're going to do down there. But so I just felt like we're asking them to take on some pretty heavy duty responsibilities and some compensation does seem appropriate. How we do that adequately so that we aren't making, I realize that people have in their job descriptions other duties as assigned, but when you're asking them to take on, especially take EMS, she's taking on some pretty heavy duty responsibilities and she's not going to get any compensation for that. To me, that just doesn't seem right. So then what do? We just don't do anything. And
Are we talking about Birch, Ms. Birch?
Yeah, whoever's the person who's handling the emergency management and the ambulance part of it. Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And in that respect, she was asked to serve as interim. So that would make sense then, according to past practice. The other individual, however, has not been asked to act as interim. And in fact, a lot of the duties are in their job description to be acting in the absence of the other. But again, outside of that conversation, I've had department heads come to me and say, there's more to this story, and, you know, seeing this item on the agenda has raised that for a lot of people. There are a lot of people who are doing 2 jobs and aren't getting any compensation above that. And so,
And shouldn't they though?
well, and this is where it's
That's my
important to
question
get
is-
people paid correctly. And this is where, you know, yeah, I'm not disagreeing. People should be paid adequately and accurately for the duties that they are performing. But I think at this point, because it's so all over the place, is it better to get the comp and class study done so that we're paying appropriately?
We have
Or-
department head here, so we'll call on her next
No, that's fine, yeah.
to get her. What do you think? Sure.
Candace and I did have a talk about this morning, and this is one that I have 4 employees right now that I can think of off the top of my head that have taken on additional duties, and have not gotten any additional compensation for that. It kind of falls under all other duties as assigned. Our one, it was supposed to be just temporary, and we were gonna hire an HR person months and months ago. They're still doing those HR duties. And so for some of them, it's duties above their pay grade too. I think it would also be very hard to try to figure out how do you look at what are those additional duties that are above and beyond.
So what are you saying? Are you saying
I would.
other duties as assigned?
I think it's other duties.
The
as
world's
assigned.
not fair.
And I really hope the comp and class will resolve the issues. That the comp and class will take a look at, okay, nutrition moved from public health to our ADRC. That manager took on the nutrition program. I'd like to see where the comp and class would have that fall. And Candace and I talked about that a while ago. Do we do it, do we bring something forth now? Do we wait and see? And really decided to wait and see what would come from the whole comp and class study. Because for a couple of my employees, I think it will change. I think the comp and class will change where they fall in the program, because those are permanent duties too that have been assigned to them.
But in the same discussion, she is prepared that some may go down because they are no longer doing some things that they were doing before. And, that's part of righting the ship is,
So would we actually lower their salaries?
well, and that's something that we addressed previously in the comp and class that we did. We guaranteed that no one would lose money. If nothing else, we would freeze them until their new wage caught up. There are different strategies to approach. And I think that's something that you formulate in the implementation stage. And in that phase, once you understand where you're at and how far below market you are or above market. I mean, we may have jobs that come in above the market. They're getting paid more than what the market says they should. I don't know what those would be, but if those are, we're not going to then give them raises just because everybody else got one. So, there are those challenges that come into play, and there's definitely some real thoughtful discussion that has to happen on how that implementation looks.
I would agree with Melissa that someone who's doing an interim director, whatever. I mean, we did this with Josh. We did it a couple times with Josh. When they step into that role, then they were compensated to some degree. It wasn't the same as what the director, it was I think in Josh's case, it was a middle of the road thing, if I remember right.
No, we did it with Tim, but he's gone.
And I would agree with that. Now, if you're capable of doing that work, right? So some things require, you have to be capable to do the work too. You have to have the education, you have to have some type of background to be able to do.
Well, some certification.
Certification, whatever it may be. And if you don't have that, then you're doing, like Trish is saying, in my opinion. That's where I would draw the line in it. If the person who can step in and can do that work, and until someone is hired and they're qualified, I'm fine with that. But if they don't have, if there's certain certifications or whatever it may be that they're supposed to have to do that interim work, and they don't have that, then I don't see how you can do that. And then, of course, they can't do the whole job anyway. So that's where I could draw the line, I guess.
Yes, Mr.
It
Turk.
would seem that in line with what Mr. Cooey is saying, it would seem it's a lot easier issue if it's someone moving to a different position on an interim basis. whether it's a director or whatever it is. They slid into that position, okay, they're doing that job versus looking at the list of 64 things that are part of their job description. Oh, these two aren't part of my, I need more money because I'm doing these two things, you know? It would seem a lot more straightforward if we define it in terms of being moved into a whole separate position versus there was one position that's not there presently, so we farmed out those duties over several different people.
Mr. Manning,
My thoughts on this is the water is so muddy. I'd hate to act on this until we had that study.
I agree with that. I'll tell you where I would like this to go right now is we have a administrator, let her be the decision maker on this. And two examples she's thinking of, I can see one, the ambulance, EMS should be additional compensation, but another one probably shouldn't be, so. Candace, are you comfortable with that?
Well, I don't know. I think that I've got to think about that further because I do think that there's more to this than just those two positions.
I know.
And so and the board seems pretty divided on it, so maybe we just set a flat rate. And they get X amount additional per hour for taking on additional duties for the time being. I don't know.
Until the compensation study is done.
Yeah. Maybe that's part of the solution. But again, how many people over the years have taken on all that stuff that haven't gotten any compensation? And now we're going to change it midstream.
That's the Pandora's box.
Yep.
I'm afraid of.
That's what scares me, especially like I said, after the department heads that have approached me with concerns because of their staffing patterns and what has been expected with job cuts and transitions. Yes, Don. Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Just one point,
Mr. C.
Candace. Some people take on additional duties or responsibilities or activities without being asked by any committee or board or authority to do it. That happens. And that's a slight deviation from the question of compensation. If they've done it on their own, if they've arrogated to themselves the authority to decide what they're going to do, that's another question, but that happens. So do you agree there's a difference there?
There is a difference, but in this case, I don't know that that's what we're necessarily discussing. This is.
Yeah, I know.
What the supervisor has asked them, or a circumstance has forced them to take on additional duties. But I see the other side of this. I hate asking people to do work that they're not getting paid to do. I really don't like that either.
Well, I agree with you, but I don't agree with paying somebody for additional duties that they've only taken on of their own volition.
Correct. I don't either.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This is where it comes back to, when you're taking someone and putting him into an interim role, that to me is cut and dry.
Yeah.
That's not about taking additional duties. That's saying, okay, we need this position filled, and in the interim, this is how we're going to fill it. I can make that argument all day long. I would struggle with, because anybody who's worked in the last 30 years has taken on more duties and didn't get paid for them. At some point in your life, you did something more than what you were expected to do, and you weren't compensated for it. I'm sorry, but that's part of life. It is what it is, and that's how you move forward.
But there's a difference. There's a difference between whether you're asked by your employer to do it or whether you do it voluntarily.
And I agree with that. And what I'm saying is you should feel pretty comfortable that at some point in your life, you had to do something more than what was expected, and you didn't get paid for it.
Well, I know, having been married for 50 years, I'm well aware of that.
Yes, Mr. C.
But the separation is when we need someone in a director or whatever the role may be. When we need someone to take that role, then you can say, okay, this is the interim role. This is why we're doing that. I feel comfortable with that. And I don't think anybody as far as the employees would feel any different about that. They understand that. You know, it's been done in the past, but just to say every time someone's doing something extra, well, I gotta sweep the floor today. Well, that's not the case, right?
When Clint left, we had an interim administrator.
Exactly. I mean, we do this on a pretty regular basis, unfortunately, so I don't think that should be a problem. You know, I have no problem with what was talking.
Administrator Pesh, what are you looking for from this group?
No, this is,
On
this
this
is helpful because at the end of the day, then if it is an interim administrator level role or director role, then that would be under my discretion to appoint someone into those roles if they need to be filled. And then we would have to decide on some sort of, I'd have to look and decide on some sort of appropriate compensation. Or send it to Carlson Detman.
Mr. Chair, one last comment. The only,
Yes, sir.
I think the problem I'm having, the problem I'm having is that we've asked someone who's now doing all the duties in the office because there's only one person left in that entire office. So everything is falling to that person, whether we ask them to be the interim or not. Everything in that office is getting, I don't know, is there anyone else? I mean, we know we're contracting out our GIS, but everything else is getting done by the one person left in the office. So how is that not having them the interim?
It's along the same line that I would agree. You know, and that's, you're kind of putting them in that position.
Without saying you're putting them in that position.
It's-
I'm sorry, I know you don't agree with that, but.
I don't agree with it for reasons that I won't discuss here.
Right.
Are we in closed session?
No.
Not yet.
So that's where I have the issue with that, is because there are certain people that can handle being given a title and there are other people that clearly cannot. And when they cannot, that's when we have issues. So,
With work being done in the office. There's only one person there, so if it's, so it's,
The departments are absorbing some of that work too, or we're not. You know, the department, when Darren left, MIS didn't pick any of that work up. But we did in zoning.
I mean, it's, we can talk.
I don't know how to talk about it without.
We
getting
can go into
specific.
closed session.
Can't get specific on it.
Talk about it.
So,
Well, we,
But it's not restricted.
Well, I think you need to wait and see how many other ones come out of the woodwork. After this. I mean, if you're, it may be a can if you don't want to vote. But it's gonna happen, but the study will help. That's still
but that's months away.
3 months away. or-
Yep, it is. It's months away.
At the end of the day, most all of this stuff, what's it come down to? Are you fair and are you consistent? If you're fair and you're consistent, you got it covered, right? And that's what all of this, every time, it always comes down to that. If we're fair and we're consistent, people will be upset, but you're fair and you're consistent. And that's the thing you have to strive. And that's the way I would look at this. And can you be fair and consistent with what your decision is? And if that's the case, whatever the decision is, it is. That's what it comes down to when you're dealing with people, because I deal with all the people for 30 years in a large plant setting, and you have to be fair and consistent. If that's what you got, they're always mad about something. Somebody always is.
Right.
But they understand that this is what it is and this is why it is. And that's how we have to be. And you gotta be transparent on top of that. And I think that's what we're trying to do right here. And I feel, that's why I feel comfortable with what I'm saying, because I can live with that decision. I have no problem with that decision. If we're moving someone into an interim role or a position that has to be filled or whatever the case may be, I have no problem with that. And I can explain that to anybody else who's doing extra work. I have no problem.
Agreed.
So that's where I stand.
I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make that one.
Mr. Manning, seconded by Coe. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have people online?
Yeah, a lot, but I don't believe that there's anyone. Board member.
Any board members?
They're all saying it as guests.
And I would say that any board member
Dooryard.
All right, Melissa, are you satisfied?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Okay.
the opportunity.
Very well handled.
There you go.
Are we live on one?
You are back on.
We're live.
Okay, we're back in open session. I think we've come up to future agenda items. One. Okay, I will entertain a motion, Mr. Manning. Second,
I'll say.
all those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Candace.
Oh, no.
Well done.
It was quite crowded.
Remember,
Darren closed the bar.
remember, open,
I did.
Ready. So ready to be.
closed session remains closed session.
Well, I'm gonna probably upload them in this week. Also.
He'd ask you.
Not running again.
Yeah, I'll upload them this week.
What's the deadline for filing?
Thank you. What's that?
Deadline for filing is when?
First Tuesday in January.
Okay.
Okay, starts to, it's up till December 1.
Yeah, I haven't made the appointment, it's gonna be.
It's before that.
Yes.
Yep.
Remember.
Well, yeah, but you got.
I know.
How that movie goes, you jump, I jump.
That's true.
I'm looking right now.
I got it on calendar.
You can do it now, but you have to do it by a certain date. So hang on. It's due by 5 p.m. on the second Friday before the deadline. So, let's see, you have to.
Long Island.
Oh, I know, Mark. Don't miss it.
February 2.
Oh.
Give that to me.
Tell them traffic was
The
there.
22nd
Of December.
December.
You have to have a non.
How are you doing, Marty?
Otherwise, you avoid the extension, where we have an extension of filing.
They want to do a bronchoscopy.
I know, all I do work.
Oh.
You'll get an.
So then we would just switch roles.
Just
She's a citizen.
Sound a little bit.
You sound better.
Okay,
But I don't know yet.
you don't know, never know.
We are over.
Thank you.